Welcome along to the final edition of Matchbook's NFL podcast for 2021. Drew Dinsick is on board as ever. Hello, sir. How are you? You're back in your humble abode in the Pacific Ocean. Love to see that. Fabian Sommer is on board as well. Suma, good to see you. And Rob Pizzola as well. Last week was a pretty good week, gentlemen. 7 bets put in. 6 winners. The one loser was Washington plus 11. But you know, the good thing about that was we pretty much knew after about 5 minutes there was going to be a loser. So it wasn't one of those ones that we kept on with. Variance was with us. CLV, we won this battle a couple times. The Bills plus 2.5, 1.97. The Bengals minus 3 at 1.95. That went off at minus 7. Bucks minus 10 for Drew, 1.97. And Rob's best bet there, the Bucks Panthers under 44, 1.96. The Bears plus 6.5. Big D, Nick, he gets it done at 1.94. And Drew, Dolphins plus 3. They went off at minus 3.5. I'll be honest, I would have bet that up to 6.5, knowing what I know from watching Notre Dame games at Ian Book. And yeah, it was just a disaster there. Now, when you beat that one. But Rob, to you, 4th down conversions, a lot of them last week, a lot.
Yeah, the most in any week in NFL history, which is a big win for the nerds and the analytics guys. But yeah, I mean, I think it's important to touch on it because everyone always harps on these end game situations, Harbaugh going for 2, the Chargers losing games where they go for 4th down conversions. And like no one really realizes it or wants to talk about it when it is effective. And last week, a lot of teams put 7 points on the board instead of 3. And the teams that were settling for field goals last week, ironically, Brandon Staley in a losing effort, Cliff Kingsbury against the Colts on Saturday, ended up losing the games in situations where they could easily gone for 4th down. So the NFL is evolving. 20 years ago, it was a very run-heavy league, and now it's a pass-heavy league, and it's evolving in terms of decision-making as well. And people are going to get on board or they're going to get left behind. But this is the new NFL, and teams are trying to improve their win expectancy in games. So it was nice to see that last week as someone who's a big proponent of taking more gambles on 4th downs.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. Drew, any follow-up there, bud?
Yeah, all it took was Bill Belichick getting filleted, finally, being called to account for his questionable decision-making in a primetime game, and then everybody paid attention. Everybody caught notice. Even Bill Belichick himself was, impressively aggressive in that game against the Bills. And I guess it just can't – I am – at this point, if you have any exposure in the AFC market does not include Buffalo, I would be worried. Surely the quality of play from Josh Allen in that contest and just sort of his ability to elevate his game when it mattered most should have you concerned if you don't have any Buffalo in your pocket.
Hey, Suma, you won CLV pretty well last week as we touched on their Bengals minus 3. I think, to be fair, even if, it was Huntley was going there, I think that was a good bet anyway. You saw from the start that Joe Burrow, he was cooking.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Joe Burrow was absolutely dismantling that secondary. And at the end, I'm not sure whether Lamar Jackson on one leg would have been any better than Huntley.
Or Josh Johnson, or whoever they're going to put in there. All right.
Yeah.
Week 16 was good. Yeah, let's hope we can keep it going into the new year, into week 17. 4 main games we're going to touch on here. The Chiefs-Bengals is first up. Pretty interesting AFC matchup. And we'll take a look at the betting as we have it at matchbook.com. What are we looking at here? We're looking at the wrong game. Well, we got the Chiefs and the Bengals, 1.48. You can back on the money line. The Chiefs, the Bengals at 2.9. The Bengals getting a 5-point start to 1.93. The Chiefs laying 5 at 1.97. 51 is the total. I was going to start with Suma here, but he's having a few technical difficulties. He's going to talk to me in a while about the over. But Drew, first of all, to you, mate. You reckon Cincinnati's aside here, getting the 5?
Yeah, it's tough for me to square this number from basically any angle, matchups, power numbers, just the general, the situational spot. This is a big game for Cincinnati, and I know they're coming off of one of their biggest wins of their career, and these are a bunch of young guys, and there's a tendency for a little bit of a letdown here, but it's not like they're not playing for something awfully important here, because a loss puts them in harm's way, where they'll be dogs on the road week 18, and they are clearly not out of the woods here. not in the playoffs by a long shot. So I think the Bengals will have some relatively strong focus. I like that, the confidence that Joe Burrow is playing with. And I like the matchup of the fact that he's got 3 wide receivers going up against a Kansas City Chiefs team that really hasn't faced a dynamic passing threat in a while. We have maybe the one game against the Chargers to point to over the last 8 weeks where the Chiefs have really faced a healthy, dynamic offense, passing offense in particular. And so this is going to be a tough test for these guys. And I would expect that really win or lose here will come down much more to who can avoid the key mistake. I know you have probably your two most dynamic and impressive quarterbacks outside of their interceptions this season in Mahomes and Burrow. I think whichever of these two guys can kind of avoid the key mistake is probably going to win this game. 5 points is, that implies that on a neutral, Kansas City is 7 points better than Cincinnati. I don't know about that. Not sure anyone in the at the top of the NFL market is 7 points better than an average team right now. That's probably about as good as you could convince me that any team is. And certainly Cincinnati's not an average team. Cincinnati's offense is legit. And if you're going to get involved with an underdog against Kansas City, it better be an underdog that can go score for score. And I think that's exactly what you have in the Bengals. So I'm not calling for the Bengals to win out right here. I think realistically, the Chiefs probably find a way. Obviously more experience, a clear head coaching advantage. However, 5 points is too much for me to walk away from in this contest.
Yep, could not agree more. Suma, you played over 49 yesterday. That number is climbing. It's up at 50.5. 51 is the main line at matchbook.com at 1.93. Still a bet at that, but you expect points and plenty of them.
Yes, exactly. So yesterday I was actually a little bit surprised that the total came down. And my best assumption for that is that someone in the market was playing any weather angle, because I usually use 2 weather forecasts. The one was showing 11 mph of winds, and the second one was showing 15 mph of winds with up to 30 gusts and a little bit of snow. So I'm just assuming that someone out there was just trying to get ahead of any potential weather news. Got 49 on that. Now looking at almost 51. I would play it at any number up to 51. 50 and a half would be great. I just think that first of all, the current weather reports are showing like 11 miles per hour of winds and a very small probability of snow or rain. So I think we should be fine in that department. But I just like the matchup of 2 explosive passing offenses against overrated defenses. Both offenses have been destroyed by some turnovers at times this season. If we strip out turnovers, both teams are at the top, first and second. Kansas City first, Cincy second, right behind them, and EPA per dropback, just if we exclude turnovers. So Cincinnati has lost the 4th most expected points from turnovers on offense. Pretty crazy to think about. But I think that the Chiefs offense has been playing a lot better lately. According to Timo Risky from PFF, the Chiefs are the most efficient offense over the past 2 weeks against 2 high looks. What was their kryptonite early in the season? They are slowly finding ways to attack the coverage. They are also trying to create more explosive passing plays against that coverage. Mahomes is playing a lot more within structure. So that Chiefs passing offense sitting at the top of the league right now. They are the number 1 offense in the history of the NFL in converting a set of downs into a new first down or a touchdown. So pretty remarkable. I don't really like the Bengals defense a lot. They're solid against the run, but against the second most pass-heavy offense in the league, I don't think that their run defense, even with DJ Reader back, will make much of an impact. The Bengals offense defense also very vulnerable over the middle. They ranked 27th in DVOA against tight ends, 25th in DVOA against passes over the middle. Basically exactly the kind of areas the Chiefs want to attack you. Travis Kelce, coming off COVID list, might not be at 100% after having some symptoms, but I still like that matchup for the Chiefs offense. I'm penciling them in for at least 27 points here. And then on the other side, it's entirely possible that Zach Taylor comes out with a strategy of pounding Joe Mixon, but I don't think the strategy will last like for 2 quarters, because I expect the Chiefs to score early and often. So the best way for the Bengals in this important game will be to use your best assets on offense, Joe Burrow, your 3 deep wide receiving corps, and just try to throw the ball on the Chiefs defense. The Chiefs, even though, like Drew mentioned, they've been playing really well since the Titans game, but they've faced nobody. They've only faced 2 solid offenses. One was completely handcuffed by injuries to Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb, and the Chargers could have dropped a 50-burger on them. So I'm not really sold on the Chiefs' defense. They will have a big matchup advantage in the trenches, but if Joe Burrow gets out the ball, and if they try to attack those cornerbacks, I think the Bengals should be fine to get into the at least into the early 20s. So any score of like 27, 24 should get us home. But I also think that this specific matchup with 2 explosive passing offense provides some potential for a shootout.
Yeah, that's the thing. I like either side that gets behind. They've got some weapons. Even like with the Bengals, Higgins, Boyd, and Chase. They're scary trio of wide receivers. Rob, what's your thoughts on this one, though?
I don't have a lot of strong thoughts. Very small lean to the Chiefs. I think that there's a couple matchups that really work in their favor for this game. Obviously, Joe Burrow, amazing game last week, but that was against a Ravens defense that was pretty much tailor-made for him to go off. No defensive backs, very blitz-heavy team. Now, the Chiefs are a blitz-heavy team. Spagnuolo is a blitz-happy defensive coordinator, but I was actually going through their schedule this year and looking at blitz breakdown by game, and he's very smart in which quarterbacks that he does blitz against, and typically does not blitz a lot against quarterbacks that excel against the blitz, like Joe Burrow. So I think that the Chiefs' defense at least can keep Joe Burrow in check, maybe in a neutral game state. I think later on in the game, if the Chiefs do get out ahead, then potentially the Bengals might be able to move the ball. I have a lot of concerns about the Cincy offensive line, though. Bottom 5 offensive line in the league for me. If you look at what Kansas City has really excelled out in defense in the last few weeks, or in the last few months, I should even say, they've been dominating the line of scrimmage with that defensive line. So I do think the Chiefs offense, or the Chiefs defense, can hold the Bengals offense in check for a bit. And the one real matchup I love in this game, obviously some concern, Suma hit the nail on the head with Travis Kelce coming back off the COVID list, but Cincinnati has not been able to defend tight ends at all this season. And I think that's a big problem when you play the Chiefs for obvious reasons. You go back to a couple weeks ago when they played the 49ers. George Kittle got 15 targets in that game. He caught 13 for 151 yards, was very explosive. And to me, the final point I'll make on the game, I think the Bengals, if we just look at it in a vacuum and take their schedule over the majority of the year, teams that they should have beat this season, they've beaten them pretty comfortably. When they've had a step up in class, or even teams at their level, they've struggled in those games. And we forget that, they had back-to-back weeks at home against the Chargers and the 49ers, where they were frankly dominated in those games. I know the 49ers score won't indicate that because they let the Bengals back into it, but the Chargers final score, 41-22, certainly does. I don't think that highly of Cincinnati. I think they're still a little bit overvalued in markets. So it would be a Kansas City or nothing type of game here for me. I understand completely why Sumo would like the over here. You do have 2 prolific quarterbacks. It means it makes a lot of sense, but KC or nothing for me in this game.
A Suma 50.5 is 1.87 a matchbook. 51 is 1.93. There's a whole lot between that. Obviously, 51 is a very key number, but if you were to bet either one there, which one are you going to take?
I would take the 50.5.
At 1.87.
Yeah.
All right. Good to know. I think we'll pencil a 1 in here for that. Don't dislike the Bengals +5, Drew, but I think this might be stronger.
Can I ask a quick short question for Suma? If you're an over ticket holder here, are you more excited about Kansas City taking a lead or Cincinnati taking a lead?
Cincinnati.
Right. What happens to this live total if Cincinnati goes up 2 scores? Does it adjust appropriately, or is that like
probably not?
empty the account on over?
No. Yes. So if the Bengals are up 14-0 in the first quarter, I think there will be a good opportunity to bet the live over.
But that's been the case for Chiefs games forever, right? If the Chiefs are trailing, you bet the Chiefs live and you bet the over live. Like it's just they go hand in hand because they speed up the offense significantly, air it out. So yeah, definitely. I think if the Bengals going up a couple scores in the first quarter would be massive for the over.
Yeah, don't disagree with that. 50.5, so is the bet at 1.87. All right, good stuff. Next game, we're going to look at Dolphins Titans. Current betting as we have it at matchbook.com. And the money line, you can back the Dolphins 2.62, Titans at 1.56. Dolphins getting 3.5 at 1.95, and 40 is the total. And that total has been bet to the under in the last couple of hours. Rob, Dolphins, I mean, look, I think everyone knows the last 6 games who they've played. They've gone on this great run. But they do seem like a pretty good team defensively as well. It's hard to knock them or pick holes in them right now.
The NFL market has changed drastically over the course of even 5 years, where I think years ago when I first seriously started betting the NFL, this would be a game where the Titans probably would have opened as a pick 'em. A lot of people would have put a lot of stock into this Miami winning streak, and Tennessee would have been a good bet. Now, the market is very clear to identify these situations where teams have had these, I don't want to say false wins, but it's been a bit of a mirage. And I like the Dolphins in this game. Like, I understand why people think that they're frauds because their winning streak, like you said, Sully, it's been nobody's. Like, Baltimore's been the only impressive win they've had, and they're arguably the biggest fraud of the good teams. I know that they have some issues too with their offensive line, which hasn't manifested into a major issue because of these terrible teams that they've been facing. But if we look at the Tennessee defense, Tennessee's defense is now 20th in pressure rate. They were actually top 10 for a large majority of the season, and that's quickly been falling off. So they're not generating pressure at the same level that they were earlier on in the year. And at the end of the day, it's not Miami laying the 3.5 points here. It's Tennessee. Miami doesn't have to win by a margin. Tennessee has to win by a margin to cover this game. And this is a team that hasn't scored more than 20 points in 5 consecutive weeks. And now you're asking them to win by 4 in order to win a bet. And I think that's a bad bet, regardless of A.J. Brown being back. And yes, he ravaged the 49ers secondary last week, which isn't very good, by the way, one of the weaker secondaries in the entire league. The Dolphins secondary is a massive upgrade. They have 2 very good corners in Xavier Howard and Byron Jones. That's a huge upgrade from what the Tennessee Titans faced last week. A lot of people will point to the rest situation. You got extra rest for Tennessee. You got short rest for Miami. Historically speaking, that has not mattered whatsoever. So if anyone actually wants to look at that, it hasn't had any historical significance. So not exactly a great spot for Tennessee either. And as much as we want to talk about the Tennessee defensive line against Miami's offensive line, Miami is actually now the number 1 team in the league in pressure rate at 29.1%. They're number 8 in pass rush win rate in the NFL against the Titans offensive line that is ranked 3rd worst in the league right now by Pro Football Focus grades. And they're only 24th in pass blocking win rate. So I don't see this as a path to success for the Titans being able to score significantly in this game. I think it's the wrong number. I mean, I couldn't get to the other side of 3 in this game. I like the Dolphins. I don't know if the winning streak's going to continue, but I think there's a strong chance this is a close game one way or another. I'm happy to take the hook with the 3.5 points.
Drew Dinsick, wholehearted agreement on this one, bud?
Yeah, I was there as well. I was surprised to get this one at 3.5. I thought 3 was the best we were going to see. And I thought the 3.5s, honestly, were going to be swallowed up a long time ago. So the fact that they're still hanging out there has got me a little nervous, honestly. I thought the market would have been reactive to this opportunity. I will just take this time to talk about how weird the Dolphins season has been. They obviously win a fluky week 1 against the Patriots, thanks to some fumbles. Then they lose 7 straight, where they play one of the more difficult schedules. They had to play Josh Allen twice. They had to play Tom Brady. They had to play, just a who's who of good quality, experienced quarterbacks. They lose all 7, and then they turn around and they win 7 against the likes of the Jets, the Texans, the dregs of the NFL. And so it's very challenging to put a fair price together on this Dolphins team because, that they've lost to their quality opponents and they're beating the trash. And, Tennessee would presumably qualify as a quality opponent. However, they're relatively one-dimensional on offense right now. And if you can match Xavier Howard up against A.J. Brown and take him out of the game in any way, shape, or form, I think your pass rush is going to get home against a weak offensive line and Ryan Tannehill, who has struggled against pressure so far this season. Tannehill's taken some bad sacks. He's made some bad mistakes under pressure. And if I think Flores' defense is playing up and playing aggressively and the pass rush is winning their 1v1s, then Tennessee's going to struggle to score in this game. I think their team total is a little bit too high. I think this plays more as a defensive struggle. And between these two defenses, I like the way the Dolphins are playing better. I like their ability to create takeaways. And realistically, one of the things that kind of goes unnoticed as the season goes on is a coach's ability to kind of coach up the players, to improve their performance, individual performance as the season goes on. And what I've noticed, at least watching Dolphins games, and granted, I didn't watch a lot of them because a lot of them were pretty meaningless. I've had to go back and watch more as they've become kind of gotten into the discussion for the playoffs here. It's been pretty obvious looking at some of the younger players on this roster, on the O-line, on the D-line in particular, and seeing how they've developed as the season has gone along. And that's a huge credit to Flores and this coaching staff getting the most out of those players because, the Dolphins have had a lot of draft capital these last couple of years. And if they, if the coaches aren't doing their job of improving the performance of those players, then, what good is the draft capital? A lot of that stuff is coin flippy anyway. So credit to those guys. Really cool to see how well they've played. And I would like to see them have the opportunity to go head to head versus the Patriots in week 18 with the chance to punch their ticket to the playoffs. That would be very cool, considering what the season has been like for these guys. And really same with the Patriots. Like, it would be great if that game had kind of playoff importance. Really told us a lot about these two very young teams, young in different ways. Obviously, young quarterback for the young quarterbacks on both teams, but young roster top to bottom for Miami. So I'm hoping Miami gets the win here, keeps their playoff hopes alive, and honestly, the Titans are pretty fraudulent in a lot of respects. I really, they'll be in the playoff mix. They may even win a playoff game because they'll have the home field advantage presumably, and holding on to the 2 seed likely. But I think it'll be interesting to see who they match up against in the playoffs, and if there's a case for that underdog to pull off the upset in Nashville.
They're 10-5. Titans are 10-5. Nuts. Suma, I know you haven't played this, but you could surely go with the Dolphins plus 3.5 here as well, yeah.
Yeah, at 3.5, it's Dolphins or nothing for me, even though I'm not really highly interested in betting the Dolphins. What's this number if Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't break his thumb in the second quarter?
Yeah.
So,
the
Niners were dominating that game, and now in hindsight, we know that Jimmy was playing with a broken thumb for the entire second half. Pretty crazy. In that matchup, the only thing that concerns me for the Dolphins is their offense has 0 floor and 0 ceiling. So they probably need to get away with a completely clean game and maybe some mistakes from the Titans if they want to win straight up here, but they only need to lose by 3. So that's a different story. And early in the season, even though it was the same defense, the Dolphins got torched by a few offenses that were able to beat man coverage, like the Bills and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And if Julio Jones and A.J. Brown are playing like a full complementary of snaps together, I can see Tannehill having some success against the secondary if you can get the ball out. So those would be my concerns with playing the Dolphins. But at 3.5, I could not bet the Tennessee whatsoever, the Titans whatsoever.
Yeah, it's a low total too, 14. You're getting 3 in the hook. It's hard to lay 3.5 with a low total like that.
Matchup we didn't mention. Can we get, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12, targets for Jalen Waddle against Jackrabbit Jenkins? Is that too much to ask? That feels like a matchup that Waddle wins every single time.
Yeah. His reception total last week, I think, was 6.5, and I flew over that as well against New Orleans in a game that they were well ahead. So he's getting a lot of looks. So yeah,
that's their only offense basically right now. So RPO
good offense.
He doesn't hand off, and Jalen Waddle try to do anything after the catch.
Yeah, because he's a one-read quarterback. So he's going to look to his ex-Alabama buddy too, isn't he? Yeah. So all right, yeah. Don't mind the look of that, though. Yeah, Dolphins plus 3.5, but I do like the Dolphins defense against this Titans offense. Next game we'll talk about, we'll switch the NFC. Good one, potentially really good one in Big D on Sunday evening. The Cardinals against Cowboys. Moneyline betting at the moment is the Cardinals 2.98, the Cowboys at 1.46, 5.5. The Cardinals are getting that has been steamed up from 3.5. It opened on Sunday night at 1.97. 52 is the total, slightly shaded towards the under. Dinsick, I kind of touched on it there. You expect a good, entertaining game, plenty of offense, and you think they'll go over?
Yeah, exciting to see the market coming with me on this one. It's up to 52. I played this over at I think 50.5, under the key of 51. And realistically, I think the Cardinals offense is very, very tough to quantify. They do a lot of things that are frustrating. Cliff Kingsbury makes lots of mistakes, particularly in-game decision-making. However, I still, in the back of my head, am not entirely sold that the Dallas defense is the best unit on earth. And, going up against Kyler Murray is going to be a tough ask, particularly with the Cardinals with the backs against the wall. Any kind of wrinkles, any kind of aggressiveness that we haven't seen from Cliff, I think his hand is forced in this one. This is their last chance to try to win the NFC West and get a home playoff game. I don't think anyone really accepts and it's funny too, because a couple weeks ago, Cliff Kingsbury was like your number 2 guy in the coach of the year market. But I don't know that he is entirely safe. His seat isn't a little warm just because of sort of this late season swoon here. And, I think basically because his hand is forced, because the Cardinals are going to have to be aggressive. And for whatever reason, Cardinals playing a little bit better on the road than at home this season. I think you're going to get a pretty competitive effort here. And I think the Cowboys unlocked a lot of their offensive potential last week. Some of that was because they were finally at home after a weird stretch of unusual scheduling and lots of road games. They finally returned home and they just absolutely uncorked a spectacular performance. They could have scored more, honestly. And, 2 touchdowns were defensive and special teams, but like that offense was capable of whatever they wanted in that game. And not all of that was because Washington's defense quit. A lot of it was just, how smoothly operating they were. They're at full strength on the offensive line. I don't see the Cardinals defense doing much here to stop the Cowboys. Cowboys can pretty much attack them in any way they see fit. And so this is basically has every recipe for a back and forth shootout. Ultimately, I think the Cowboys get the win. I talked about this with Andy, but there's some week 18 markets open. And one of them is Cardinals -5 against the Seahawks. And I see a very real scenario here where the Cardinals lose this game. The Packers beat the Vikings. And then, the Rams beat the Ravens.
The Ravens.
And then Kyler Murray gets week 18 off. That becomes basically a de facto bye week for the Cardinals. So just kind of looking ahead, I think that's a plus EV in a neutral situation. And I think that could close Seahawks favored depending on who the quarterback is for Arizona.
Interesting. And NFC West favorites, underdogs. They seem to be covering outside of the last one we got the Seahawks. But Rob Pizzola, as a Dallas Cowboys fan, you got to be excited right now. What's the ceiling for this team, offensively, defensively? Albeit I know it was against Washington, but that is what this team is capable of.
Yeah, ceiling is Super Bowl. I mean, I think they're a legitimate Super Bowl contender. I really do. This is the first time in a long time I've been excited about this team overall. And honestly, I like this matchup for them. I think there's going to be a lot of appeal for people in betting Arizona because of what the look-ahead numbers were in this game versus where they are now.
Yeah.
And Dallas winning in prime time. A lot of people saw a blowout in prime time, and that seems to be a thing people typically like to fade. This Arizona Cardinals team, if I draw a comparison, gives me vibes of the Pittsburgh Steelers from last year, where down the stretch, a lot of people were talking themselves into line value on Pittsburgh just because of what the price was the week before on the look ahead. I actually vividly recall myself, Suma, and Adam Chernoff last year talking about a Bills-Steelers matchup where the look ahead was Steelers -3 and reopened with the Bills favored by 3. And Adam, who I really respect, made an argument in terms of line value. And I think a lot of people are going to do that with Arizona. But the reality is Arizona is 3-5 without JJ Watt. It's been a completely different team offensively in the red zone without DeAndre Hopkins. The last 3 weeks, they've scored touchdowns on 30% of their drives into the red zone. Now, some people might say, well, then some regression is due, positive regression, because they're 62% on the year. But to me, they don't have that weapon in the red zone anymore that they could just throw it up to in DeAndre Hopkins. They've tried it with AJ Green. It hasn't worked. It actually resulted in a game-losing interception against the Green Bay Packers. So it's just a completely different team. And I ask myself, if we didn't see the 8-0 Cardinals start this year, and we only saw the last 8 weeks, what will we be lining this game between Cowboys and Cardinals? And it would be on the other side of 7 for sure. And it's very difficult to quantify what these guys are. But Cliff Kingsbury, dating back to his time at Texas Tech, I don't know what it is. It could just be noise completely, but his teams have this penchant for getting out to a very strong start and completely fading down the stretch. And that's what's happening with the Cardinals here. They don't match up well with Dallas, particularly because they cannot stop the run anymore. Their defensive line, since J.J. Watt's gone out, is incapable of stopping the run. They're going up against the Dallas offensive line that is very strong. And it's just very difficult for me to see matchup advantages for Arizona in this game. So to me, it's, I'm not chasing this Cowboys price at this point, but I think that this is a game where Dallas does match up pretty well against this Arizona team. And you look at the Cardinals, the last thing I'll say is, but we have back-to-back weeks now where they got smoked by the Detroit Lions, and they could not beat a team that was missing basically their entire offensive line, with guys going down with offensive line injuries in game as well, backups. And if that's not an alarm signal for me with this team, then I don't know what is. So typically I'm a very, very much of the buy low, sell high mentality. I just don't necessarily think that the Cardinals have necessarily hit rock bottom yet. I really think it could get worse for this team. So that's my thoughts on the game, but I'm not running to bet Arizona just because of what the look-ahead line was last week.
Just Rob, very quickly on that Kingsbury second half malaise. Any theories on that? It's just that he just runs out of plays offensively, or what do you think the deal is?
I don't know, and that's why I think it's probably more so noise than anything. Although he started coaching Texas Tech in 2013, so we've had now 8 years of him as a head coach where this has been a consistent trend. Maybe it's just a thing of not pacing themselves, using the good plays early on in the year, not being smart enough as a coach to adapt as the year goes on. Because a lot of coaches face adversity. Look at the Chiefs with Andy Reid, right? All these cover 2 defenses, and then they got to try to figure it out. And Andy Reid is capable of doing that. Maybe Cliff is just not. I've never thought highly of him as a coach, so it's possible. But that's just my best guess.
He had Mahomes at Texas Tech as well, of course. He didn't really kind of get the full thing out of him. Drew, I'll come back to you in a second, but Suma, first of all, with this, I don't think you've played it or had a bet so far, but you do kind of lean with the Cowboys, probably similar to what Rob had there.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with a lot of what Rob said. And just to add a few nuggets here, Kyler Murray with DeAndre Hopkins on the field this year, 283 passing attempts, 0.31 EPA per pass attempt. Without DeAndre Hopkins, 121 passing attempts, minus 0.01 EPA per pass attempt. So it's a pretty drastic split. And I think we talked about it last week that without DeAndre Hopkins, every defense can play entirely different against the Cardinals on defense. And another point that I want to make is that the Cardinals are down their cornerback 2, 3, and 4. They tried to sign Rashad Breeland off the street, who got cut by the Vikings a couple of weeks ago because of some random alteration with a DB coach or something like that. Breeland, they wanted to fly him in on Tuesday. He got COVID. No clue if he's going to play. If he's not going to play, we are looking at guys like Antonio Hamilton covering CD Lamb in the slot and Kevin Peterson on the outside against Michael Gallup. So that defense is pretty much falling apart. No J.J. Watt, down several cornerbacks. Buda Baker has not been practicing yet this week. So, I completely agree that there are some pretty certain matchup advantages for the Cowboys.
True, jump back in.
One thing I wanted to kind of push back a bit on is the importance of Hopkins. In years past, I would have been step in step, like, oh yeah, like, my God, is he important? He's a cheat code on third down. Guy never drops a ball. But this season, his play has not been like so good, so important that I really have sat up and taken notice. And in fact, his absence has coincided with the absence of Rodney Hudson at center, who I think is maybe equally or more important to the success of this particular team because of just the quality of play of the pass block, and extending the time for Kyler Murray to make something crazy happen has completely dissolved in his absence. And he's trending in. I mean, as someone on the over and someone looking for 20-ish points from the Cardinals, I'm hoping that he plays here. But I think his presence matters more than the market realizes. Centers, weirdly, some centers just happen to matter a ton to the quality of the overall offensive line. He's one of those guys. And as far as Cliff Kingsbury goes, he's just not a very good coach, and he doesn't do self-scouting in season and, trying to kind of look at the season as an arc and improve as you go through so that you're performing your best when it matters most has never been part of his game. And I think that shows up in the team performance year in, year out. But again, I think the back against the wall sort of nature of this game at least brings out a little bit more in-game aggressiveness from him than we have seen in past. Hopefully that leads to points. I guess for question for Rob, if the ceiling for the Cowboys is the Super Bowl, are you more concerned that the defensive performances will come back to earth when you're playing quality opponents, or more concerned that Mike McCarthy is going to make an in-game blunder / time management error that cost the Cowboys a win?
I'm most concerned about McCarthy. The defense, to me, while I think obviously they had all the positive turnover luck working in their favor early in the year, and still are, I think some of that can be attributed to the fact that their pass rush is very, very good. You have 3 elite pass rushers on the field at one time now. It's just very difficult for quarterbacks to make plays against that type of front seven. To me, it's not only the McCarthy, Dak, Prescott combo in like 2-minute drills where they kind of look at each other. Nobody knows what to do. I don't know if Dak's even given the authority to call timeouts or not, but he has no idea when to use them either. So I definitely see that as being like some sort of hidden, like if you go up against Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur, like they know exactly how to work those 2-minute drills, right? Those are hidden points that they're always going to get. And people are always like, oh, the Packers point differential, what a lucky team. They win close games because they know how to win close games. They have personnel that's capable of doing that. So to me, that's the biggest concern would be the Cowboys coaching staff. Although I would say, honestly, pleasantly surprised with McCarthy this year. Outside of the timeout situation and clock management, still been aggressive. They're running a lot of play action. I think they're doing a lot of things that suit the strengths of this team. I hate, like, in-game management stinks, but outside of that, I think they've been pretty well coached.
You know what, Drew? Just one thing there, DeAndre Hopkins. I take your point, but the problem is, I think why he's so highly thought of is that the other weapons, like we touched on the Bengals wide receivers earlier. Like you look at Rondale Moore, Christian Kirk, even Zach Ertz, who hasn't really kind of come to the party, he's coming over from Philly. So I think that's maybe there's been more made of DeAndre Hopkins than otherwise. Sorry, Rob.
Another thing with DeAndre Hopkins is this reminds me of when I was doing work on the Colts maybe 3 or 4 years ago. T.Y. Hilton was trending downwards. Everyone's like, what's wrong with T.Y. Hilton and whatever. He faces a different type of coverage. And when he's on the field, it opens things up for all the other receivers. And I think that's the same thing with DeAndre Hopkins. Like every defender, every safety is very aware of where he is at all times. And whether or not he's playing well or catching balls or they're throwing to him, like the fantasy numbers don't matter to me. It's his presence on the field that dictates the type of defense.
He's got gravity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Got it.
He draws away the number one quarter. Very quickly before I come off this, so Drew, very quickly for you, it's 52 currently at even money. Would you take it at that? Because I know you played at a better one. We can pass. We can pass on this, by the way, if needs be.
I would at 52. I'm actually more inclined to just play a Dallas team total over. It's going to be like 28.5-ish. I think Dallas gets to 30 pretty comfortably here. Not a ton of respect for what Arizona is doing defensively, and particularly in Dallas. But 52.5 is still a plus EV by my numbers.
Yeah, it's 52 flat at even money, so it's not bad. Rob and Suma, just before we come off this, we spent a lot of time on this game, but you guys both made a pretty compelling case for the Cowboys. I know the line is 5.5, but what would it have to be? And I know it opened at 3.5 on Sunday. What would it have to be to get you with Dallas?
I think Suma's probably higher than me. Like I make the game 6, so I would probably need a 4, and it's not going to happen. That's kind of why I'm neutral here, but that's where I'm at.
Suma similar boat.
Yeah, and I also wonder whether there might be more Cardinals money coming into the market. Maybe Rodney Hudson, another full practice today. Maybe some positive news on Wandale Moore, even though Kingsbury already said that they are game time decisions. But on the other side, I also think that Rob made the point that some people might think there is too much value on the Cardinals to pass up because they are that compelling team over the course of the season. So I just wonder that there might be more Cardinals money entering the market, but then again, that would be a move from like 5.5 to 4.5. So pretty much in that area anyway.
Yeah. All right. Let's put in tentatively over 52 at 2.0 at matchbook.com. All right, good debate there, guys. We spent a bit longer on it than normal, but that's okay because it was a pretty good debate. It should be a good game. Last game, we're staying in the NFC for this one, Sunday Night Football in Lambeau. Vikings and Packers. Current money line betting as we have it currently is the Vikings plus 3.5. Packers at 1.33. Vikings getting 6.5 at 1.95. Same 1.95. Packers minus 6.5. 47 is the total. Pretty middling one. Not that surprising. I don't know if we've weather coming to Lambeau, but Drew, I must admit, I was surprised that this line held at 6.5. I don't know, am I missing something, or is it a bit of a trappy kind of number? But to me, this just seems like a game that the Packers will win, and they cover the 6.5 as well.
Yeah, Packers have some red flags. Obviously, they're winning games ugly. It's been a while since we've really seen them perform to the level of some of these other contenders, and so I think it's kind of natural. It's natural to kind of assume that that they're not as good as their record would indicate, and that's been sort of a common theme with the Packers going on 3 seasons, the entire Matt LaFleur era. Really, I think you could say that everybody in the betting market has kind of had in their stomach, this team's not as good as their record. And I would look at this particular matchup against the Vikings, and you definitely have some narrative-based players in the market who are saying, well, this is the Vikings Super Bowl. They're going to leave it all out on the field. Oh, by the way, the Packers' run defense is poor. Dalvin Cook is back. There are a lot of kind of one-off narrative points that would lead you to make a bet on the Vikings in this one. I think, which is probably why if this goes any direction between now and tip, I would guess it goes to 6. But for me, this is Packers or pass. I played the Packers. I think realistically, I think they have some huge matchup advantages in this one. I'm excited to see Jair Alexander back. I know he's not confirmed to be back, but I would expect that they get him some game time, some game shape type of reps in this one. And he matches up tremendously against Justin Jefferson, who's really the more key important piece on the offense for the Vikings. Adam Thielen, of course, on IR for the season. So this really comes down to the performance of Kirk Cousins on top of, what the Vikings can do if they get into a negative game state in this one. My rating for the Vikings this season has been all over the place. Like I was way high on this team for a lot of the early middle portion of the season, and it has been just absolutely plummeting of late. I cannot really tell you what it is about sort of the overall team performance that has kind of gotten them here. But they've had some really suspect games, and their win against the Packers last time out was relatively lucky. Like they let the Packers back in that game way more than they ought to have. Similarly, their game against the Bears, they really should have been able to put their foot on the throat more emphatically than they did. I know that Bears only got that one touchdown late in that contest, but still that should have been one-way traffic for Minnesota. Same with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They let the Pittsburgh Steelers back in that game. And really the defense in general for the Vikings is just playing quite poorly. Does not seem like there's much buy-in left in that locker room for what Zimmer's trying to do. The pass defense is an enormously suspect problem going up against the likes of the Devontae Adams here. Not sure what wrinkles you can induce here to keep Devontae Adams from getting to, 10 recs for 150 and a touchdown or two. This is, and as much as people want to kind of make the narrative that this is Vikings Super Bowl, I think realistically, this is the Packers, dress rehearsal. They get the Lions next week. If they win these 2 games, they get the bye. So this is like their last opportunity to really play a team with a competitive, with enough talent, playoff talent, albeit not well coached. And so for all those reasons, I would be surprised if the Packers are sleeping in this one. In general, the Packers, I thought, got lucky against the Browns, got lucky-ish against realistically, they got unlucky in that fourth quarter against the Ravens. But the defense is still reasonably well coordinated. They're getting healthier. Their pass rush is a problem against an offensive line that's crumbling beneath their feet for the Vikings. So I think this fare should be on the other side of a touchdown here, as I have the Packers kind of in the 5 to 6 points better than an average right now, with Aaron Rodgers playing the way he's playing, and I have the Vikings a little worse than an average team currently. So I don't mind laying the points here with the Packers at home in frozen Lambeau in prime time in their playoff dress rehearsal.
Yeah, Suma, you also lean Packers?
Yeah, at the current number, if I had to make a bet, it would be Packers and not the Vikings, just because I just don't see how the Vikings can be highly efficient on offense without Adam Thielen. It's also going to be a very cold game, like I think -1 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 17 degrees in our German and Canadian Celsius. So
the world.
Yes,
outside of the U.S. Sorry, Drew.
I think it's Celsius, so it doesn't bother me.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay. And these very cold games, historically, there's not a huge sample size on them, but historically, home teams have outperformed the spread a little bit. So I think these cold games favor the home teams a little bit, especially now the Packers, they are used to play in the frozen tundra, so that might be worth some small adjustment towards the spread. But I don't trust the Vikings defense at all right now. They're running out of cornerbacks. Davante Adams should absolutely smoke them. Cameron Dantzler on the outside instead of Rashad Breeland now. Marcus Valdes-Scantling is back. I think the Packers will be able to run the ball well. Probably a A.J. Dillon game in the cold. And when we go back to the first game, the Vikings were only able to score on big plays when they still had Adam Thielen. So yeah, all in all, I think without Adam Thielen, that offense is too limited to fully compete toe-to-toe with the Packers here. And if I had to make a bet, it would certainly be Packers and not the Vikings.
I saw a stat on Twitter. I can't remember who put it up, and I can't remember the exact one, but I think it's like if it's -1 Fahrenheit down through history, or something like 166 is the most passing yards ever. I need to find out. Might find out there in a couple minutes if anyone's in the chat who's seen that. But Rob, what are you thinking of this one? I know you haven't played it yet, but anything to add to what the guys have?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a Packers or nothing game for me as well. Probably a little closer to neutral than the other two guys here, but Minnesota has also fallen off a cliff for me in my ratings. Part of it offensively is the loss of Adam Thielen. I talked about it last week when we broke down Vikings-Rams, where I think he's so integral to that lineup, and he obviously started last week and then got hurt very early on in that game. I think that's a big blow to them moving forwards because it just allows opposing teams to key in on Justin Jefferson. And I think the Packers are going to be able to do that. And on the other side of things, the Vikings defense has also kind of fallen off a cliff. Part of it's the cornerback situation, but ever since they lost Everson Griffin and Daniel Hunter to IR, Everson Griffin, the mental health issues, it's just not the same defensive line. They do not have the same pass rush anymore that they used to. With those guys on the field, I give them a much better chance of getting home against Rodgers and causing some disruptions. Without them, it's just Aaron Rodgers picking apart a vulnerable secondary, in my opinion. So I feel like this is a game that Green Bay should be able to control. I think a lot of people will talk themselves into Minnesota because they saw Cleveland run the ball very well against Green Bay last week and imagine Minnesota can just do the same. But I think the Packers will be very smart about it and force Kirk Cousins to beat them. I think that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. I'm not sure that he is capable of doing that. especially in cold weather. To me, it's a Packers or nothing type of game. I'm sort of done with the Vikings at this point. I think that they're at full health. I think this is a very good football team. It's not where they are at this point in the season right now.
Drew, you had a follow-up question for the guys there.
Yeah, so current market leader in MVP is obviously Aaron Rodgers. If this is a cold weather game with low, passing output, does that hurt his chances? What does he need to do? If he loses this game, does that take him out of the MVP race? Right, this is a primetime Sunday night football game, and I feel like there is some hesitancy in people buying in as the Packers being this good. What do you have any thoughts or any action in the MVP market based on this game, one way or the other?
The MVP market's tricky for me because obviously it's voted on by members of the media. I don't know whether Aaron Rodgers' vaccine status is going to be held against him in the voting. I mean, look at the MLB Hall of Fame ballots every year, right? With like Barry Bonds and the steroid era, and these guys just won't get in, and it's always held against them. I could see that being the case. Like I could see Brady getting some votes, even Mahomes getting some votes, depending on how Jonathan Taylor closes the year. I can't even believe we're talking about a running back MVP, but like I can see the narrative, right? Like especially if Green Bay was to lose one of these games and or this week, and Jonathan Taylor goes off, I can see it, but it's challenging. I still like my vote right now goes to Aaron Rodgers. If he loses, that's going to change everything though, because this is a week-to-week league. And we see the movements in this market from week to week. I think Tom Brady will probably cook against the Jets this week. And if it's a Packers loss, I think Brady's going to vault himself back into the favorite role.
Okay. But a clean, like 4 touchdown type of performance clinches it for Rodgers.
I think so. Very little risk of the Lions beating them in the final week of the season. Don't know if the game's going to matter or not for seeding. We have no idea, but yeah, I think a win here. I never want to say clinches it, but it probably gets him over the hump with the votes that he's going to lose for his takes on COVID this year.
Suma, very quickly, it's something that, but
yeah, because Rob mentioned that the Vikings defense has also been falling apart. I just checked it. Since week 11, the first game against the Packers, they have given up 28 points in every game except in the Bears game. And that was the one where I won on Minnesota very luckily. Mm-hmm. And Justin Fields had like 6 red zone trips. So crazy.
I mean, they lost by a touchdown at home last week, and they had a +2 turnover margin in that game. It's very difficult to do.
Oh, yeah. +2, they outgained them. They outgained them on offense and had a turnover. They won the turnover margin, and they were never inside the number.
Packers -6.5, 1.95. Let's lock it in. Not going to be our biggest bet, but yeah, I like it. It just seemed like a number that was a bit off for me as well. So just for the Celsius converter Fahrenheit, it'll be -17 degrees Celsius at kickoff in Lambeau on Sunday night. Just give me a bit of sense. Celsius -17.
Cold.
So, yeah. Sounds cold. Yeah.
That's the one. That's the one where it hurts to catch the ball. It actually is painful to catch the ball.
So yeah, Devontae Adams mightn't be getting these 10 receptions. Back the unders, maybe. I don't know. He's so hard to cover. Even 2 guys the last night again for the Browns. Just still gets open. All right, quick recap. What we had: Bengals Chiefs over 50.5 at 1.87. Dolphins +3.5 consensus there 1.95 over 52 in the Cardinals Cowboys even money at 2.0. Packers -6.5 at 1.95. Check out insights.matchbook.com for a recap of all of those bets and all of our other podcasts as well. If you just want to recap, or if you just don't get time to listen to podcasts at Christmas, which happens, it happens, and into the new year as well, you can check them out there. And if you haven't got a matchbook.com account, and if you want to get signed up today, use the bonus code NFL20, bet 20, get 20 in your first NFL bet. It's not a bad offer to get you going into Sunday night. Not a bad offer for this side of the Atlantic anyway. For the guys watching on the other side of the Atlantic, you're probably used to kind of bigger sign-up bonuses. But yeah, we got for that one for another day. Different market, bet 20, get 20, NFL 20 for people in the UK and Ireland. All right, Rob Pizzola, you're laying 14.5 with the Bills at home to the Falcons. Big number.
It's a big number. Obviously, anyone who's bet NFL in the history of NFL would be concerned that this would be a quote-unquote letdown spot for Buffalo, having beaten New England last week. I went through Buffalo's big wins under Sean McDermott. Tends to not be the case. I think they're just a well-coached team. They're going to get up for any game, especially a home game. And the Falcons have played a bunch of good teams this year, and they've gotten smoked in every single one of those games because they cannot generate a pass rush. They have one good defender. It's A.J. Terrell. He'll be on Stephon Diggs, but the Bills get their wide receivers back. They'll be able to move the ball up and down the field on this pass defense, especially if Allen isn't pressured. On the other side of the ball, you got the Bills, who are now number 2 in pressure rate in the league. Miami has surpassed them at number 1 against a very bad offensive line with a quarterback who is essentially a statue behind that offensive line. This, to me, is blowout potential. We've seen the Bills blow out a lot of bad teams this year. I think they will continue that trend this week. Maybe I make the Falcons a lot worse than market right now. That's fine. I just think they're a horrible football team. So I'll lay the 2 touchdowns and the hook with Buffalo.
A very disappointing team. Some talent on that team, but they're just not getting it done. Maybe next year, Arthur Smith, maybe a new quarterback is probably needed here as well. Drew, Raiders, Colts over 44.5, currently 1.94 at matchbook.com.
Yeah, I'm basically kind of reading into the new COVID rules as honor system, which means Wentz probably goes. And really, there's a lot of positive matchups for both of these offenses against their opposing defenses. Raiders defense lives or dies by the pass rush, and now they are going up against the elite pass blocking unit for the Colts. So this is a nice opportunity for both offenses to flex a little bit in the controlled environment. And my favorite here was 47 with both of these teams at full strength. Obviously, it looks like Waller may be the exception. I don't know that he'll be available for the Raiders, which makes this a likely Colts win. But I'm fine with Derek Carr in comeback mode, going trying to get you some comeback points here. So a lot of decent angles here that support an over for me.
All right, it's pretty low number, 44.5. Assume your best bet comes in Cincinnati.
Oh yes, pretty easy. I like the over here, and let's see a great shootout with 2 of the young best quarterbacks in the league right now, and the future of the AFC.
Yep, agreed. Drew, your best bet. I'll be honest, worked with you maybe 3 or 4 years ago. A team from the West Coast playing on the East Coast, well, maybe Central Time Zone, then coming back to the East Coast. You wouldn't have done this a few years ago, Drew. You would have stayed away from this one. Would you like the Rams to cover 3.5 in Baltimore?
Yeah, you're right. This is not a great situation. A lot of travel here for the Rams. They may be travel weary. They may not look great early in this game. But ultimately, there is one clear outstanding poor defense in the NFL this season. And it's not the Jets. It's not the Jaguars. It is the Baltimore Ravens. Their pass defense is absolutely brutal. And without Marlon Humphrey, even with some guys coming back like Clark and Young and Jimmy Smith, this is still a pass defense that is very, very, very pick-onable, exploitable. And I think Stafford, after kind of having a lackluster performance last week, gets right to a degree in this spot. Cooper Kupp, no way you can match up against him. No way you can match up against Odell Beckham. And realistically, this is an opportunity for the Rams to kind of do what they do against bad defenses, which is hang 30-something points. Whether or not Lamar Jackson goes may influence this market. From what I've seen, the videos this week, he does not look right. And if he is pushed out there, I like the Rams even more. He will be a sitting duck behind a very poor offensive line with little mobility. And even if it's Tyler Huntley, I don't think Huntley is as good as what we have seen, just in terms of statistical bottom line this season. Now that there's a little bit more tape on him, I would expect that the Rams have some solid plan in the back of their pocket if it is in fact Hundley. But either way, the Rams pass rush up against a poor offensive line for the Ravens is a tasty matchup as well. So Rams, I think, get a pretty comfortable win in Balto.
Rob Pizzola, you have a pretty decent record on what I call hold your nose kind of bets. This next one is probably your best of the season. We've had to wait 17 weeks to get it. and it's the Giants +6, the Bears. I presume when Joe Judge said he was going to rotate Jake Fromm and Mike Glennon, that was enough to get you over the edge, getting these two dynamic quarterbacks in.
I can't believe I'm doing this. Yeah, I mean, this isn't a hold your nose bet. This is like a take a bath and throw a toaster in there type of bet, right? Like this is I don't love this week in the NFL, so I'm going to go with my biggest numbers edge. Typically, I don't bet on bad teams, but they are facing another bad team, and that's what this is all about here. Like to get to get the Bears to this price, I could never do it. You're talking about a team that ended up being a touchdown underdog in Seattle last week, who I don't think very highly of, and now we've seen this complete flip. And I know that the Giants are terrible. I get it. People don't have to tell me how bad the Giants are, but their last 6 games have been Philly, Dallas, Chargers, Dolphins, Philly again, Bucks. It's easy for them to look terrible when they're playing a schedule like that, and for them to get blown out in games when they're playing a schedule like that. Chicago has won 2 games since Khalil Mack got hurt. They had the 1-point win last week against Seattle. A month ago, they beat Detroit 16-14 on Thanksgiving. They haven't been favored by more than 3. You're telling me they're favored by 3 against Detroit, and now they're favored by 6 against the New York Giants. Mike Glennon, he stinks. Jake Fromm, he stinks. I get it, but you know what? Like, they're not the ones that have to win this game by 7 points to win a bet, right? Yeah. They just have to stay within a margin. And honestly, I bet Dallas against the Giants a couple weeks ago. The Giants easily could have backdoored that game. Fromm threw an interception in the red zone from like the 5-yard line on one of the last plays of the game. Their defense is still keeping them in games for the most part. They did for the first half last week against the Eagles before the train, like the wheels came off the train. It's ugly. I get it. Whatever. This is the wrong price in my opinion. I'll take the Giants.
You know, I'm not going to slide you because honestly, you made some of these selections. They all seem to win, so it's a numbers thing. Oh, I'm with you. It was just I hope we see more Mike Glennon than Jake Fromm. I'll put it that way.
You know what? I hope we see I hope they stick with what they said, and it's going to be a combo of both. I feel like that's an underutilized strategy in the NFL, where you got to prep for one quarterback. You see a different one in game. We see it all the time. It happens in the NFL. If starter gets pulled, backup comes in, plays well. I kind of hope that they do play Mike Glennon and Jake Fromm. I think
the QB poo-poo platter. I like that. Okay.
I hope the 49ers do for my Super Bowl futures do that with Jimmy G and Trey Lance at some point as well. That would be nice.
Yeah. That's underused. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Yeah, no, Jake Fromm, the last of it was just look, he'll get more reps this week. It should be better. I don't know. You look at some of those guys, like, in all honesty, I know he played with Georgia or whatever it is, but like he never really looked that good then either against SEC defenses. And some of these guys just get into the league somewhat.
The last point I'll make is Davis Mills for the majority of the season looked like complete garbage. And I'm not saying Jake Fromm is Davis Mills, but that was a product of facing a very difficult schedule. And now we've seen Davis Mills play 3 easier defenses in a row. And he's actually looked very competent, more than competent in those games. And I don't like Glennon. We have a history of Glennon being bad. I don't like Jake Fromm. But I do think that the schedule contributes to how poorly they have looked. They faced a lot of good teams in a row, and it's going to do that sometimes.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. And like I said, you have a pretty banging record with these bets, man. So I ain't going to doubt you. Our last show of 2021, guys. A lot of fun. Thank you for your contributions all year. We've obviously got one more regular season week to go before we get into the playoffs. Happy New Year to our audience as well. Thanks for sticking with us through tumultuous 2021. But we've had some good records here with this best bets. We'll put an update up next week. But the guys are very much in the black. My thanks to Drew, Rob, and Suma. Happy New Year to all of you guys out there. And we'll be back next week for week 18. Goodbye for now.